And we're live. Welcome to the Best in Slot podcast, a Warcraft podcast by the community for the community. I'm your main host, Sparty. I'm here with my co-host, Midgettes. Midgettes, hello. How are you this fine Sunday? It's Sunday, right? I
It
forget.
is Sunday. You've lost track of time. You've
Oh,
been so
man.
busy this week. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm pretty good, besides being exhausted and just, I'm running on fumes and energy drinks and coffee at this point and lack of sleep. But I'm good. I'm good. I'm energized. I'm wide awake for this podcast, which is really the most important thing. But welcome. This is episode 39, and today we're going to talk about the first week of the new expansion. Well, I guess that was a bit of last week, but we're going to talk about the first couple of weeks that have been going on, what's new in the community, and really raid expectations and raid prep, which will be the crux of our show today. But yeah, are you ready to get right into it? What's new in the community?
Yeah, do we have can we do a joke first?
See,
I
every
guess
week
I
you
haven't had my
complain.
joke
I'm just going
for
to
a
talk over
week.
you. Yeah, every week you complain, and it's such an awesome joke. So I don't know why. Just accept it that these jokes are a thing and they're awesome. You know what? My last company, a quick little anecdote, the last company that I worked at, my lasting legacy is every day at their pools, they now have a joke of the day, and the kids love it. That is how I'm remembered, by a joke of the day. So,
Okay, so you're going to be remembered by a joke of the day through Warcraft too?
I don't know. I hope I'll have a better legacy than just a joke of the day.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, you ready for this one?
I suppose.
Fantastic. Why couldn't Dracula's wife fall asleep?
Why?
Because of his coffin.
Oi.
Hilarious. All right. So we got some blue news, right? There was a blue post.
There was some blue note post. It says Battle for Azeroth becomes the fastest selling World of Warcraft expansion ever.
Interesting, interesting. So 3.4 million units. So you look at some of those numbers. I mean, it's exciting that it was the fastest selling one, which means good hype. Even though I don't think there was a ton of hype, but at the same time, I think the marketing campaign and everything else was similar to previous expansions. Maybe not, Mr. T and Jean Claude Van Damme and Aussie levels of hype, but it was good. So 3.4 million. That's not bad of a proposed 6-7 million. That's okay. I thought we would have had a higher number at this point, but I guess people are still buying the expansion at this point, and the number will continue to grow. So yeah, it's great that it's the quickest one, but I thought there might be more. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Well, they keep talking about it, that they have more things coming. So we'll just have to see what else is coming. They
Isn't
talk
that
about,
the truth?
that, well, we still have the war fronts. We haven't seen those yet.
That's true. This is true.
So those will be interesting. And I know for you, you were really looking forward to them. So we haven't
Yes.
seen them yet. Hey, I'm just running around collecting pets. So, I have 100 more pets to go get.
Of course. Well, we got to do more islands, right? I love these islands.
Right. Exactly. So did you get a chance to look at the Warcraft Q&A? That was the big talk this week, of course. Last
Uh,
week.
well, I submitted my own question with Guild Auction House, or sorry, the Guild Communities and the Auction House and the Guild Roster stuff. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I did go through the recap in terms of the kind of stuff, and they touched on a few things. I thought it was okay for a Q&A. I thought they could have done a little bit better or give us a little bit more information. But I mean, it was good. It wasn't a great one. But let's go over some of the things they talked about at the Q&A.
Well, they removed the auto accept and the group fighter add-ons. And I think some of it was to get rid of the server load from that. But
Yeah.
they were talking about how it was, just an add-on to complete the quest for you, basically.
Yeah, philosophically, I do agree with Blizzard on it, and people don't like this. I mean, but philosophically, I do agree with Blizzard, and their their reasoning for this because they want the game to be social and it's not fly around different quests and that kind of stuff. And the game's come a long way since Mists of Pandaria daily quests, and they were a chore and they were a huge pain in the ass to the world quest system to sort of where it went. I think Blizzard really misstepped by not dealing with it sooner, and so people got used to this auto accept group finder add-ons, and now we still have the group finder add-ons, but you have to type in the number of the quest or whatever to find a group, which is a little bit better. I don't know. The intention was for players to be a little bit more social. Have you been doing groups as a world quest? Have any of their viewers?
No, I've been doing them by myself.
Oh,
and just so you know, just a comment because I'm leveling my second priest. My second priest can kill him faster than my 120 can. So just so you
well,
know, we still have some scaling issues there.
well,
Some of the bigger quests you can they have the internal Blizzard group finder on it,
Hmm.
but it just I'll do them solo. I'm on Storm Rage. Somebody will show up eventually.
And that's the truth. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing a few more with guildies now, and just a few more with people that are around, and we'll chat. We'll be more social. So I think it's getting there. We are talking to each other. We're having fun. Hey, do you need this world quest? Whatever. Go to this place next, and you just do them together. It's so much quicker as a group. Like even as a tank, which is unkillable, and I've got the stirrups and the hoof plates where I can just interact with everything and run around and not die. It's so much quicker as just doing within a group of 2 or 3 or 4 people or whatever, and it's easier. But I guess that's
No,
social.
because then I can't find treasure chests and pets.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, well, see, we all have our priorities.
Yeah.
I will see how it goes. I don't think it's bad, but again, one of the reasons I'm on Storm Rage, and I rage about being on Storm Rage at the beginning of an X pack when it doesn't go well because
Mm-hmm.
of the traffic. But when it is going well and once everything stables out, there are so many people on the server that it's rare that you don't have somebody coming to do the same quest. So
Oh,
you're
for
still
sure.
not doing it by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been very few times where I'm having to solo a rare by myself and be there for 2 minutes killing this thing as a tank. Usually there's people, waiting there for more people to join in or whatever, and it's not been an issue. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy on being on a hype hop server. It's outside of the couple days of server issues. It's a great place to be.
Well, and right now we're struggling. The high pop servers are struggling more with the auction house lag and the guild bank lag.
For sure.
And that has to do with just the sheer numbers. And it was something else that they touched on in the Q&A.
Yeah, I hear.
And so they've got go ahead.
I hear communities broke everything, and of course, it's communities. But I mean, they did touch on auction house lag, right? Where the amount of people, those people posting things in quantities of one. There's a special place in hell, right, or hell yeah, for these people where they're just. I just it's frustrating. Like for me to click stuff, time is money, and if I have to click through these one stupid things, it's not worth my time. I will pay more per quantity or per one if somebody puts in a stack of 200 for me. Like you make my job easier, sure, I'll pay more for that, right? Like, isn't that what
I
most
do
people
too.
do?
We
Yeah,
we tend to buy, just so you know, the guild also tends to buy in stacks.
yeah.
And it's when you go through the first 300 items and they're all in quantity of one, I don't care. I'm not sitting there and opening the mail for 300 items.
No,
So when I get down through my add-on and I've just got a list of quantity ones and I've bought all of the multiple quantities. But Blizzard's actually putting something in place for that.
mm-hmm.
And we don't know all the details yet. It's coming to the PTR soon for testing. But they're going to have a larger deposit for quantities of one. So the auction house cut will be bigger for people who want to post in quantities of one on certain stackable items. So some items, like if you put a BOE up there, it's not going to be impacted. But if you have 200 herbs and you put them in quantities of one, you're going to pay more to post them on the auction house, so they'll get a bigger cut.
I like that. I do like that. It should really inhibit a lot of these gold makers, and that's fine to make gold. I do whatever you want, but when it's affecting this stability of the server, and yeah, we could bitch about Blizzard code and small indie. Like I hate that meme at this point. That's a small indie company. But yeah, I mean, if it's gonna help the server and help this 15, 16-year-old code, then by all means do it.
Absolutely. Well, and something else they're doing is some optimization upgrades on the engineering side.
Hmm.
Now, I actually felt strongly enough about the guild bank and the auction house lag that I actually posted on the forums. And one of the things I told them that I was disappointed about was that they hadn't done some of these things sooner, because we've been talking about this for several X packs
Hmm.
and several patches, and we see it really hard on some of the larger servers. And I said, these things happen, but the disappointing thing was that there were all these signs that it didn't quite work right, and it just didn't appear that anything was done. So it had to completely break before we do server upgrades. It's a little concerning. I'm going to say that because the bank and auction house has been driving me nuts for 2 weeks.
No, you're going to cause me to rage in a second, because it's absolutely frustrating that however many Q&As ago Ian said, hey, you know what? Yeah, you need to use a different add-on, right? Because the auction house sucks. We get it. So it's been on the radar for a long time, but for nothing to have been done for this long until things are coming to a friggin' standstill and you cannot use the guild bank at all. You can't. You can't be there like at 9 o'clock, whatever, to deposit things or pull things out of the guild bank. I can try to there and I can sit there for 30 minutes and nothing will come out, right? It's like taking the most friggin' constipated guild bank withdrawal ever. You can't do it. So you have to go there like 3 a.m. to pull something out of the guild bank. It's friggin' ridiculous. And the auction house is not much better. Like even using Auctionate or whatever. So for it to get to this point, it is incredibly frustrating that nothing's been done. Yes, that's
It
my.
is, and you ran it better than me. And honestly, I put a lot of extra time in this week because so you guys could be working on the things that you needed to do to get ready to raid. You were mailing them all to me, so I'm up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning putting things in the guild bank. So, and I've got mail still all over.
God, you're gonna make me rage even more. So here you are at 2 a.m. staying up until that late to deal with this guild bank bullshit because you're here to. Okay, we're moving on to the next topic. Anyway, we're moving on to war mode.
Yeah, let's be before we completely derailed for auction house and whatnot. Let's move on.
We're moving on.
Well, we could go to class tuning. That's a good.
Oh my God,
segue.
really? And I've been a staunch supporter of Blizzard for the longest time, and you always have faith in these kinds of things. But for it to get to the point where, you know how DLCs are around now, you pay for the beta version, and you can play for a complete game, and then DLCs come in, you pay some more. It just feels that the same class tuning is applied. Class tuning is the DLC that you are paying for. It hasn't been tested. Yes, there is really good testing. I understand the argument of, there's really good numbers to be had from the first set of raids. If subtlety rogues are too strong, we'll nerf them. If destruction warlocks are too weak, we'll buff them. Whatever, right? We want to get things in line, and there's some variance, and that's fine. But to get to this point where it's hard because this Blizzard stamp of approval and that Blizzard polish, which we were so used to, where the hell is it? Like I've loved Blizzard for so long, and I don't shit on Blizzard stuff, but when I'm frustrated, it's clearly frustrated at some of these things that, where is it? I miss it. Come back.
Bring it back. Well, and we've got, I reported a world quest that was bugged today that I reported in beta. And I went and looked on Wowhead because whenever I have something that's not working, I go look on Wowhead because oftentimes the community there has the answer. And there were quotes of I reported this in beta. So it's frustrating as a player base.
We're trying to make the game better, but it feels
Right.
The perception is that it's feeling on deaf ears, and if
Right.
I understand that some bugs are a priority, and there's not enough hours in the day and not everything is going to get fixed. I get it, right? But the perception is that it's falling on deaf ears. You can report all you want, and a number of my guildies have said the same thing. They've reported all these things, whether it be through Warcraft devs or on forum posts in beta, and the bugs are still there. That being said, the one awesome bug that I've enjoyed is watching an army of Coopers run through Borealis. Right? Has anybody else seen this? Like this army
I
of
haven't seen
horses.
this.
It's hilarious. There's been a couple screenshots in our Discord, and
I've
I think
seen screenshots of it. I didn't know what it was.
yeah, Galva made a video of it. I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. So basically, there's a bug where you dismount and mount from Cooper, and there's a number of Coopers that will just follow you around. So there's like 100 horses that will follow your character around, and it's awesome. It's hilarious, and it's not doing any damage. I'm sure it'll get fixed, but it's pretty funny.
It'll probably get fixed before the auction house.
Oh my god. And of course, the other fun that was nerfed was the Legion Augment Rune. For those of you that had the Legion Augment Rune, which we paid for 40,000 gold, something like that, it was nerfed, and it doesn't work above 119. So that's too bad.
That was so sad. I was enjoying using it. Well, and I hate to say this, but they'll eventually catch up to the tomes and codex because right now those don't have those. Shh.
For those of you that don't know, the old Legion tomes, like the codexes and tomes, they currently still work. Like if you want to stock up on those right now and use them while you can, I mean, it's going to get nerfed to where you can't use them above 119 or whatever, because they want you using the new stuff. But whatever, use it till it gets fixed.
The one fun thing is, I guess, war mode, they're still trying to be careful with the bonus because they don't want people to feel they have to have it on.
Yep.
Do you get extra bonuses for world quests and stuff if you have war mode on?
You do. You get some more Azurite. You get more of that kind of stuff. I feel that the bonus is acceptable for those that choose to go with war mode. And again, it's a choice. Listen, if you're going to get ganked in war mode, you have no one to blame but yourself. It's an option, right? You can go cry in a corner, or you can go turn it off, right? If you get ganked by a bunch of alliance because you're a little goblin, that's just what happens. And then the same thing happens to the alliance, right? You're gonna get ganked, right? It's the price you pay, and it's what you choose to do. So, I haven't played with war mode just because I do a lot of solo world quests based off my own time. But the guildies that do them or have a really strong demon hunter, they just like to raffle stomp everybody and get
Well,
the
I
extra
know
bonuses.
Gobble's been diving into places and coming in with their goblin gliders and annihilating summoning stones.
Mm,
So, people are having fun with it.
it's
I'm
good.
going to stick with war mode off. That was my motive, my motto going in, and I made it to like level 116 before all the people started coming into our world, and I turned it off. So I'm back to Pansy,
Mm-hmm.
according to Sloot.
Oh, whatever. Um, yeah, no, go
so
ahead.
Oh, I was going to just move on from war mode
Yeah,
and
yeah,
say
move on. Go
that
ahead.
the trading Azerite armor and the artifact knowledge starts next week.
Yeah, it's still Azurite Power, so AP or AK Artifact Knowledge. It does start next week. There's a couple of questions in terms of how the switch is going to happen, whether it's going to floor your AP or whether you're going to lose AP going into it. Because if you're halfway through a level and they reduce the amount, you know, does it go down to zero? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Potentially your AP is already wasted. Hopefully they make the right choice with this one. But yeah, trading Azurite armor, great choice. Um, Again, like I've had 4 or 5 helms drop, and I finally got one epic chest. Finally one epic chest after 2 weeks. And yeah, I mean it's a good change. That being said, though, it's going to come back to all right. Well, Azurite gear is tradable. It's going straight to the DPS, right? Like most things.
Pretty much. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. Did you see the article that came out with how World of Warcraft was made on US Gamer?
I heard it was a good article, but I decided not to turn off ad block for these news websites, so I only got through a few seconds of reading it.
It was actually pretty interesting. I'm going to go ahead and link it, but it's on
Sure.
usgamer.net. And it talks about how World of Warcraft was made, and it goes through all of the years. It was it was a fun article, especially for me because I didn't play in vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy the articles that start at the beginning and talk about all of the logic.
Oh,
I suggest you
I love that
uh,
history kind of stuff. I'm gonna have to turn off ad block for this.
you're going to
Fine.
have to or use a different browser that doesn't have ad block.
Ah, that's a good
There
call.
is options of using
There
other
you go.
browsers.
That's what Internet Explorer was born.
Oh, well, while I'm linking that, did you see that the secrets community's been busy?
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was actually pretty funny. The Hive Mind mount would have been so cool. Imagine an entire guild going at like 1,000 speed from Borealis to the raid. That would have been awesome. Or, to whatever raid it is. So that would have been really cool. But unfortunately, that was taken out of the game. Hopefully, they bring Hive Mind back in some sort. So, Ball, the companion pet, is around. I haven't done it. Again, it's not a priority for me. But have you done it? I mean, it's a companion pet.
I have not done it yet because I've been making Dark Moon Fair cards.
Oh, yes.
So I have this list of things to do because I have to go get bumbles too. But Zarania's telling me that I have to be doing this, and this, and then he whispers to me today. It says, "Midget, did you get the million gold digger chicken?" And I said, "No." And so he goes and tells me this whole story, and I said, "Sorry, you told me I had to do all of these things, and you're sidetracking me." But I went and got my chicken, my Fabergé egg today. He's a snob. You have to have a million gold on you to be able for him to even consider being owned by you.
Oh, I probably should do this now while I still have a million gold.
Right? Because he doesn't take the gold, but you have to have a million gold on you, or you can't have him.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So the waste of time was also the other secrets thing, which was quite amusing because people thought it was gonna be a mount pet, whatever, and then they realized it was the waste of time, and I love that name of it. A
I
complete.
love the name of it. And I'm glad they changed the look of it. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, because it was the pendulum balls, right? Before. Yeah.
Yes.
The belt actually looks really cool for a transmog piece. It is pretty awesome, and I may do it at some point when I don't have a million things on my plate.
Well, it was definitely fun. And I got a good chuckle on Tuesday because we had the entire server waiting for the first world boss because it showed up on the quest map.
Yeah, I saw the alerts going off there. Have everybody log on. The world boss has spawned. He drops the best in slot, whatever the rune, right? and the trinket, and we all went there, and there's nobody there. And so of course they tweeted later, "Hey, world boss quest showing on the map for Hailstone contract is a bug, and we're working on fixing it. World bosses are not available until Uldir opens up." Sorry for the confusion, which was, I mean, it was pretty funny.
It was funny. Well, we had some great screenshots in our Discord of all of these people standing there waiting for the world boss that never showed up.
Mm-hmm.
So is Tally in our Iron Dwarf yet?
Yeah, so it was really strange to see Towley as a human, to for him to change to the superior race of humans and then go back down to dwarf. It is cool though. So with Seventh Legion Exalted and with whatever Honor Bound Exalted, you're able to get the Dark Iron Dwarves and the Magar Orcs, which is pretty cool. So now people are getting their their next little races, which is cool. So I think what Brain Dead, Towley at this point are Dark Iron Dwarves. I know they've been eyeing it for a while.
They have been. And if you want to know how you're doing on your progress on all of this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Wowhead has this great little tool called the attunement, and it's wowhead.com/attunement.
I like that. I mean, it gives you your Pathfinder thing, you're flying, how well you're doing for unlocking Siege or the different, whatever, or King's Rest. It's a great tool. I mean, and that's something that I'm always happy about with Wowhead.
Well, let's talk about those Dark Moon Fair decks.
Oh man, those Dark Moon decks.
Since they came out, they've gone from being the worst to the best to the worst to the best to somewhere in the middle, and now they're the best or they're the worst, and I can't keep up.
I just said, let's just grab them for everybody because at some point they're gonna be really, really good, right? There's gonna be an encounter where they're just crazy OP or whatever, or they're gonna change, right? And that's exactly what happened. They went up and down, and like you said, they were crappy and then really good and crappy. And so we had a pretty awesome cooperative effort, right, between a number of our guildies that were inscriptionists, a lot of herbalists rather, using some auction house stuff. But we made over 14 decks at an average cost of 27,000 gold per deck. So total cost of 370,000 gold. So that's what people paid for one trinket early on. We made over 14, 15 decks now, and it's all thanks to Midgettes. Like Midgettes organize this entire thing. Like it's a lot of logistical stuff, but for guilds where every bit of gold matters, to make all these, some of these trinkets were really OP and really expensive. So to make all these decks for an average cost of 27,000 gold, that's pretty friggin' remarkable as well.
Well, and it was a lot of fun, except for everybody. Hey, Midgets, did you hear that this is best in slot now?
Well, it's good. I think some of them are still undervalued, especially the Holy Paladin one, which we can talk about, in a bit. Well, I guess we can talk about that next. Yeah, Wowhead's got
well,
the.
yeah,
No,
go
go ahead. Okay, you go ahead. I'm Canadian. You go.
Well, Wowhead has a community opinion site on the Dark Moon
Mm-hmm.
Fair decks, and they have clips from each one of the classes and how they think they're faring. And so I thought it was sort of amusing because, and I'm gonna tell you that I don't normally look at them. I've been an inscriptionist for 4X packs, and it's probably the best money making you'll ever have as a crafter. And I can honestly tell you that at some point in the X pack, at some point, one of those Dark Moon Fair cards or all of them are best in slot at some point. So I just make them and know that everybody's going to want them at some point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you bide your time, and they're going to sell for a lot of gold, especially prior to a raid opening up. People realize, oh, this is really good. I need to have one of these right now, because suddenly Blizzard changed something, and hopefully we don't have another Candlegate scenario where healer trinkets get nerfed, and they said, we're not going to nerf it. Then they nerf it the next
You've
day.
never forgotten about.
Oh no,
Candle.
never going to let them live it down.
Story, though, because you even asked them, "No, we're not changing anything." The very next day, nerf to the ground, and you had just dropped us.
Yeah, I just exactly. I just dumped 60,000 gold on a trinket, and they nerfed it the next day. Just saying they wouldn't. But anyway, let's move on to the crux of our show today in our leadership lounge, which is really getting the team ready for the first raid encounter, doing a lot more prep, and it's more than just leveling. And while the teams themselves are primarily focused on getting their individual goals met, right? Whether that be AP or gear or whatever, the leadership team in a guild is often working to get everything ready for that first week of raiding, from consumables, which Midgets and Scan and Sev are working hard to complete, to coordinating things like mythic runs and island expeditions. It's a hectic first couple of weeks, and we've had our own not really struggles, but just a lot of learnings through the first groups, and we're trying to make it efficient of Let's make sure we have multiple plate classes and multiple leather classes in the same group so we can trade now Azurite gear. So it's not really setting up groups or presetting the groups, it's making sure that, we're all talking to each other and having fun and trying to maximize our gear benefits going into um, the first week of raiding. And I do want to say that every guild is different, right? Every guild has different expectations, things they're going after. Whether you're a top guild out there, you might have two different characters. Like you're maintaining two characters, you're going to have 20 Azurite power for both of them, 345 item level, whatever it is, right? Revered to your champions thing, and you're spending a lot of time doing these things. And every guild is different in terms of what they ask. But the most important thing for guilds out there is to have those expectations, right? It's going to save you a lot of issues down the road of, well, Midges isn't putting in the effort. And the Midges comes back and says, well, was that the expectation? Did you guys tell anybody? Right? And the big thing is communication, right? Communicating to the team, what's important, what these players need to do.
So with that being said, because every guild is different,
Mm-hmm.
what do you guys do? What does it take to be a DJ? What sort of expectations do you have for your team? And how
Uh,
have they, maybe even just briefly how they've evolved over the years?
Oh, they've certainly evolved. I mean, we used to raid 6, 7 days a week. I was joking about my stream the other day of the amount of prep work that was required going into vanilla and BC raids. We never had all this fun guild bank stuff. That's a new thing. You had sharpening stones and mana oils and flasks and pots and everything else. And the only thing really organized was the Onyxia head buff or the ZG buff in order to do Nax 40 and AQ 40 and that kind of stuff. So really going into the raid itself. So before the raid, there's a couple expectations that we have of our own players, and we plan on doing some kind of like a coach's corner at some point soon, so players really know what they're getting into. So it saves everybody a lot of time. But before raid, you should have general knowledge of all of the encounters and the strats, right? So multiple strats of what guilds do, whether it be different videos, your own stuff, your own research. I mean, yeah, you can look at Dungeon Journal. That's fine. That's all very basic stuff. But to know the encounters, we'll be looking at combat replays, that kind of stuff. If you have PTR and beta testing, review, participation, those things are an expectation as well. So if you can't be around for PTR and beta, that's fine. We're all working professionals, or many of us are. Well, the expectation is that you're reviewing the videos or the logs or the testing that has gone on. You should have log research of encounters specific to your player's class and role. So that's, hey, well, Holy Paladins use these talents on this encounter for these reasons. Okay, that's pretty cool. Is that going to be beneficial to my raid team in my current role, right? Sometimes, in the previous raids or in Legion, I would run, Aura of Sacrifice because that was your best HPS per second, like your highest healing cooldown. Other times I had to run Devotion because of certain reasons. We didn't have the SLTs or we didn't have the damage reduction, whatever. The other one is you should be utilizing video resources. So YouTube, TogetherTube is also a really good one. We actually watch YouTube videos together. So we're seeing it second by second and we're pausing the videos and talking about the strats as we go through them. And of course, there's lots of streams. We have a number of resources, whether it be, just other guilds doing these things or our own guys, and we share those kinds of things for us to watch, right? That's the kind of prep you're doing before raid. You're often, asking questions and clarifications of strats and the roles prior to raid. And the very basic stuff is, you're stocked up on proper gems, enchants, pots, flask, runes. And again, all those are provided by the guild. Some people say, hey, I do all these things myself. Well, that's fantastic. The guild does all of that. What else do you do, right? Like, these are very basic things. You're also utilizing the guild's add-ons. We have specific weak auras or boss mods or whatever else we're doing for our strats. And of course, you're online and ready to raid 15 minutes prior to raid. That's not like, hey, I've got a pulse, but you're ready to raid. You're in a mental place where you're able to raid and you're not really going to have any distractions. You're outside the instance with war mode off. That's our expectation before raid.
So I shouldn't just log on 2 minutes before raid and ask for a summons then, right?
Yeah, sorry, that guild perk is gone.
That guild perk is gone.
but here's the thing, like, people may not know, oh, midgets, I thought I could just log on 2 minutes before the raid. No, sorry, that's clearly outlined in our expectations of you must be outside the raid and ready to raid 50 minutes prior to, right? Like, we're going to start up invites a little bit sooner. We might clear trash a little bit sooner, or we might start talking about things a little bit sooner, but we want to start pulling by the actual raid time, right? Like we're not here to waste anybody's time. Like again, we have lives and families, and we're working professionals. We need to get things done, right? We're not here to dilly dally and turn people into fish or whatever to screw around. That's a waste of people's time, and we're not here to disrespect each other. So yeah, I mean, expectations are there, outlined. If you can't do those things, then again, a guild of this level is probably not the best one for you.
Well, I don't know. I think that should be an expectation for any team. I always hate the ones that say we start at 7 and you know about 7:30 we're finally pulling the first boss.
Yeah, I mean, there's times where things are a one-off of like, listen, tank is, I don't know, he's got some work obligation or there's storm issues and things start a little bit slow. And I've always been very perplexed by guilds where things are finally like invites are starting at 7:30, even though the raid's supposed to start at 7. If it's a consistent issue, I mean, it's clearly an issue and it's not a one-off. One-offs happen, right? Like once every blue moon.
Sure.
But then going into the during the raid portion, so that was before the raid, but the expectation during a raid. So while you're inside the raid, you're obviously listening to Discord. Don't speak over vets and raid leads. Some guilds use priority speaker. Or some teams use priority speaker. I'm against that. I'm of the mind that if raid leaders are speaking, you shut down and you stop speaking, right? Like that's the most important thing. You don't speak over raid leaders. They have something important to say, and that's it, right? Like that's the way I've always led my raids. It's fairly professional atmosphere, but we want to get things across. Yeah, finish your joke sometimes, but other times just we got to get things going. We're gonna not waste time again. So the other one I like here in terms of our expectations is perform duties and roles as assigned. And if you're a manager, you love that one because it's whatever duties I say. Listen, it's obviously reasonable. If the job is you need to go interrupt and you do the bitch duty, that is your job. Sorry, your DPS is going to suffer every single week. But that is the role you've been assigned, right? You can't all score goals on the ice every single time. Some teams need a goalie and a defenseman, and some teams need enforcers. And whatever role you're given, obviously, hopefully to the strengths of your class and spec, that's what you need to do. While we're inside the raid as well, in that vein, we also want players to bring suggestions and ideas to leadership team, via how? Well, can I just interrupt the raid leader? Hey, no. I saw this Fat Boss video. I want to do it this way. That's fantastic. Thank you for voicing your opinion and interrupting the entire raid. But there's a better way of doing it, right? It's via whispers, or we have specific role channels of like, hey, what about this idea, right? Like it's going to get across, right? It's going to go up the proper channels and go from there. We want players to have the ability to self-evaluate, to self-assess, and take personal responsibility of their priorities. Well, what does that sort of mean? Well, if things are changing, right? If you're not doing well, you should be able to self-assess of what's going poorly, right? Whether it be WoW Analyzer tool or you're going through your own logs or whatever, and you take personal responsibility for those things, right? You should have ownership of your role in that raid team. And of course, the other little stuff is, you're able to communicate effectively via, your voice chat or Discord. We have people that English is not their first language. English is certainly not my first language, but people need to be able to communicate effectively. And, we've had French Canadians and we've had people from Brazil, and we all have our different accents, and that's fine. But as long as you can communicate and understand cohesively and communicate well, that's perfect. So you should be able to take the ability to take criticism well and not personally, right? It's take criticism in the manner it was intended, and that's well, midgets, your healing is really low here. Like, come on, put on your big boy or your big girl pants and start healing. But Sparty, that hurts my feelings. Well, listen, like, I need you to heal here. This isn't like I'm not here to be your therapist. I need you to put up those numbers, mash those damn buttons. And I'm not
Hold on. What if I do? Okay, so let's go in there. And let's just say in this situation, I was doing a bitch job and I was dispelling all of these things. And you didn't happen to catch it. So you call me out during raid, and my first reaction is, but Sparty, you told me to go do this, and I'm making faces at you behind my computer screen. How should I handle that?
So in the situation probably shouldn't happen because as the raid leads, we'd know like, hey, we're giving Midges the bitch jobs. She's gonna have to sacrifice her mana or her GCDs to do these dispels, so her DPS won't be there, and that's fine, right? That being said, though, if it does happen, then you address it. Hey, just a reminder, you have me doing this bitch job in this crappy spec and this crappy talent. I can't keep up with the other holy priests that are just able to just heal all willy nilly with do no bitch jobs and are fed all the innervates, right? So those kind of reminders are also like totally fine, right? Like it's absolutely
But
okay.
probably not during raid.
Oh,
That's
100%. Well,
probably
I mean, it's what is the best way to get that across? Of like, no, Sparty, stop the raid right now. This is wrong because of this reason. Well, maybe a whisper or maybe post raid. There's a time and a place, for those kinds of things. And listen, I've been wrong plenty of time over the years. Like 14 years, it's a lot of mistakes made. But the
okay. When I get somebody to clip that, because I'm going to need it at some point, I'm sure.
But the best thing is deal with those things afterwards, right? Like it's best not to be disruptive to the raid, but definitely have those conversations afterwards. I'm totally fine of saying, hey, listen, you know what? I was wrong. You're absolutely right, and I shouldn't have called you up for that. I'm sorry. That's entirely my fault. I'll try to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's how you have those adult conversations about taking criticism personally or constructively in the matter that it was intended. And at the same time, it's one of the questions we often like to pose is, well, how many times does it take you to learn the mechanic, right? And while you're inside that raid, yes, people make mistakes. We're there to learn, right? That's how you make mistakes, through failure. But the thing is, when Midgets dies in a raid and she does something silly, I should be learning from that mistake. I should not be repeating Midget's mistake because I'm also a healer. We just learned. We're there a group learning, not, hey, it took Midgets five times to learn this mechanic. Now it's going to take Sparty 5 times to learn this mechanic, and now the next healer and the next person. No, you're learning as a group, right? So the ability to learn through other people's mistakes, other roles' mistakes. So if I see DPS doing something silly, I'm gonna think about that in my head of, okay, maybe this guy wasn't positioned properly, whatever. So that's stuff inside the raid, as well as outside. Whenever we're doing loot, for instance, we want to ensure that our loot notes are correct. So we use RC Loot Council, and that's what we did. We've used Master Loot for 14 years, and now we use a modified Master Loot personal loot system where if it's an upgrade, we can train to the Master Looter or whatever and go from there. But you should be indicating how large of an upgrade is that? Is that really best in slot? Okay, cool. So is that a 1k DPS increase? Is that a 5% increase? Is it a need, best in slot, side grade, whatever? Which means your pawn numbers, right? For those who understand what pawn is, your stat weights, those should be up to date as well, right? So we want to know, hey, this is a 5% upgrade for Sparty, but it's a 4% upgrade for this Ret Paladin. I guess it's going to go to the Ret Paladin. So it helps the loot people make those decisions a little bit better. And the one that we definitely do stress as well in our guild is you're definitely encouraged to bring a joke between wipes and downtime. Zarania, Ariana, like a lot of these guys make some really friggin' hilarious jokes. Sev, they make some awesome jokes, and it's a great way to kill some of the downtime, the wipe backs as we're going through logs and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, bring jokes, They're awesome. We want to hear them, but obviously not while the raid leader's talking.
Yeah, I was going to say timing is everything.
Yeah,
and I probably wouldn't tell a joke when Sparty's in phase 3. So, but that's just me.
Whatever. So the thing is, and when you're outside the raid, right, you're active listening, and it's not just listening to Discord and picking your nose and listening to some streams or watching Netflix while you sort of hear what's going on, but you should be active listening, right? So you're listening to the mistakes people are making, what the raid leader's saying. So it's not, hey, you know what? I just joined the raid because the raid leader wants to give me some time in, right? Because that's what raid leaders do. But you know what? I wasn't paying attention to the strat change half an hour ago, right? That's a little disrespectful of like, hey, you know what? So because you weren't paying attention, you've missed out 30 minutes of learning or an hour of learning or whatever it was. So yeah. So again, you're active listening. You're learning as we go, and you're watching our guild streams when we go through those things. And of course, at the same time, when you're outside of the raid, guess what? You could be going through those logs as well of like, hey, you know what? This person's probably a little bit low here. That's something that really helps. So as we're doing things in raid, we have other players sometimes outside going through those logs and saying, hey, so-and-so's, has lower DPS, or so-and-so could you be using this cooldown a little bit better, or they were, late on this cooldown. They're not prioritizing this, whatever, right? And those kind of things really help because they save the leadership team a lot of, going behind the scenes, right? Because they're already doing it and they're trying to be as helpful as they can outside of the raid. Those things are, again, going above and beyond. And of course, while you're outside the instance, you're ready to be swapped. So you're ready to be like, guilds don't always have warlocks. So we ran without a warlock for a couple months, and we had health pots, which meant no summons, right? But you're waiting outside, you're ready to be swapped in the entire duration of the raid. And I mean, that's within reason. Like sometimes work on a progression boss for 100 pulls, or you're not going to be in. The expectation is you are still around, you're still learning. You can go play an alt, whatever. But that's our expectation with that. And then, of course, like I said, you're familiar with any strat changes throughout the night, so you're not missing out on, hey, an hour ago we changed the strat. We're not doing this anymore. We're not killing those ads. We're now cutting the ads. And here you are DPSing the ads because you totally weren't paying attention. So that's kind of stuff that we would expect during a raid. And that's, again, generally the basics of what a guild at this level would expect.
Well, and it's interesting because I know from just watching, I learn a lot just from watching your raids. So I can imagine, and as an applicant especially, I think you want to come in and put your best foot forward. Hey, midgets, it's just a game. Well, no, raiding is sort of serious business, and there's 19 other people waiting for you. And I know because I benched for Wobble Gobble for a long time, they've already got 500 wipes in. If I'm coming in and making mistakes, their patience for it is less.
Oh, for sure.
So there's something to be said about paying attention so that you can at least sort of go in there and act like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's just like, could you imagine, you're in a guild where it's 500 pulls in, and you're being finally swapped in, and the guild's close to a kill because the other DPS DC'd, and now's your time to shine. How does phase 3 work? What do those scythes do? What am I supposed to do with those modules? Like, that's super frustrating for the entire raid team, and it's just, why do we bring this person? Why do we bring Midgets? She doesn't know anything. I'm kidding. I mean, you know plenty.
I've been told by you, and I should have clipped that, was to just not stand in stuff and heal stuff. So I take that for all encounters. That's my job.
That's exactly right. I mean, don't end stuff and heal stuff. But I mean, so now that's during a raid. And now after or between raids, there's other expectations of our players as well. You're going through post-raid analysis. So raiding isn't just raiding those 10.5 hours, those 9 hours a week. There's more afterwards. There's the post-raid analysis of you're going through your logs. You're going through stream replays, which the smart players do, of like, hey, you know what? This happened here because this person was standing over here and they're out of position. So that kind of stuff is important, right? You want to see how you can improve, right? These are all failures, and you're wiping, but it's you're learning through failure. You're learning through those mistakes, and you don't want to repeat them. You want to improve, perpetually improve throughout the nights or throughout the entire week.
Well, isn't a good way to do that just on a general rule?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you can be with a raid team, and you could be top DPS on that raid team. But you might come into a DJ raid and you're somewhere at the middle of the pack or down at the bottom. Isn't it a good general rule of thumb when you're checking and seeing what they're doing for encounters? And we had this a lot in Legion, where you had to do a lot of spec and artifact changes and legendary changes to see what somebody is doing that's better than you, and engage it from there as well as part of your own learning experience.
You'd hope so, right? Like, you'd really hope so. Hey, this person is out DPSing me. Why? There has to be a reason, right? There is always a reason, whether it's you mashing your buttons and your actions per minute, whether it's the strat, whether it's whatever. And yeah, the situation you bring up is that, hey, I'm top DPS in my guild. Yeah, you're a big fish in a shitty pond, right? Like, that's what it is. And so when you join a guild that is a higher caliber guild, you might be middle of the pack. Like, it's super rare for someone to be going from top DPS in their old guild to top DPS, in a new guild. And part of it is familiarity, and we'll get into that in a sec. But yeah, I mean, you should be doing that research as well. You're doing the class research, the strat changes, whatever it may be for that specific guild, right? You should be doing your due diligence. And you know what? Sometimes you have really bad raid nights. You have those poor raid nights where you're wiping, and these things aren't going well. And you know what? Everybody plays like Tiger Woods sometimes, right? You are the Toronto Maple Leafs. You haven't got a cup in 67, and it's going to happen. That's okay, right? You need to shrug it off, right? It's, hey, you know what? You wiped a raid. One of the questions I ask, my players, and maybe I'll ask you guys in Twitch chat, is, when was the last time you wiped a raid? right? Just think about it. When was the last time you wiped a raid? And what does wipe a raid mean? Well, wipe a raid could mean like you legit took a rage into the stack of people on Argus and you totally wiped the raid. Or what is also a wipe is you were the domino that started the rest of them to fall, right? You pushed that first one over and the raid started falling over because of you. That is also, I would say, considered a raid wipe because of your lack of healing or positioning or whatever. And you know what? Now they only had 19 players to deal with the boss because we couldn't waste a res, and that was it. So yeah, you pretty much led to that 1% wipe because of your low damage. So you need to be able to shrug off those raid nights, like be ready for a new day, whatever it is. Going to that, when we're between raids or after the raids, again, you're asking questions or clarifications or of strat updates as needed, right? We have forums, we have spreadsheets, we have Discord, we have so many different means of communication that we want to make sure everybody's on the same page. And again, we use forums, which are a little bit antiquated, but at the same time, forums are still one of the best ways to get messages across and to post relevant information. We often, whether you're an app or a member or whatever, we want players to bring those suggestions to the leadership team, right? Always. Because it's very rare to have one person that does all these, these crazy things. You should have a team, right? As a leader, the creative solutions, and this was a Picard tip earlier today too, the creative solutions should be brought by your team and not by you, right? You're only one person. Your leadership team is an extension of yourself. I like this one. So we had one, I can't remember who it was, but one person on my leadership team suggested this thing where find one thing you'd want to improve on for the next raid. Listen, you could be top DPS, top heals, whatever. Great. That's not perpetual improvement though. How can you get better? So going through those logs and going through your replays or going through whatever, how can you improve? There is always something you can improve upon. And even if you think you're top shit in that guild or in that raid team, what is the one thing you want to do to improve upon? And maybe it's not necessarily, numbers. Maybe it could be something else. And of course, the other thing we do is, again, with all these spreadsheets, we have loot spreadsheets set up to make sure, like, hey, when we're on farm, we want to be efficient in terms of who we're swapping in for these bosses. Make sure your own loot spreadsheets are up to date as well. So that's kind of stuff that you're doing after the raid. So again, it's not just 10 and a half hours of raiding. It's a lot more other time. It's post-raid analysis, and you're doing lots of research. And this is what raiding is all about, right? It's, you're there to show, like, that's game time, right? There's still practice time, and you're still doing your. If you guys have ever played any sports, right? Your raid time is your game time. There's still practice time. There's still the log analysis, the video replays. It's your own training, all that stuff, right? That's what goes on outside of raid. And then we're gonna move on to off nights. So for those players that yeah, you do stuff during a raid. But we also value a large community aspect of our guild and our team. We have Death Jesters and Zeros to Heroes. We want players that are going to be more than just raid loggers, right? Like, I don't need players that are just going to DPS stuff, heal stuff, whatever, and then log off, right? We want people that are going to contribute. So we encourage a lot of our players to run dungeons, run in-game activities, and we've done so many of those things, right? Like we do plenty of Mythic Pluses together, and we will, of course, whether it be Island Expeditions or we've done other fun activities like Guild Survivor, PvP, whatever. So we encourage players to do that. It's not mandatory, but it certainly definitely helps if you're doing more things that interact with your fellow teammates, right? When you guys are at work and you're invited to go out for beers afterwards, listen, you could be beer intolerant or, you're allergic to gluten or you just hate alcohol, but you got to go out. Like, it's one of those, optional kind of things, but it goes a long way for you getting on the team. We often do sale runs as well, so we definitely encourage our players to go, but by no means, like, again, if you don't have time, like if you only have time to do your raid stuff and you're in between raid stuff, like I've got a family, I've got a full-time career, I've got a kid and wife and everything else, and like it's tough to manage all that time, and so you're not always going to be around to do all the sale runs or in-game activities, and you try to manage your time as well as you can. But again, we want to encourage a lot of community involvement between our guilds. We expect people to be checking our forums daily for updates because that's where we'll post our most important updates. And really, we want players to strive to maximize their character. And I say that within reason. So when we say strive to maximize your character, does that mean complete every single world quest every single day. Well, it's not within reason. Not everybody has the same time to commit to that, right? Obviously, we have set expectations in terms of your neck should be this level and you should be this item level. So get through those things, um, and yeah, it might give you a little bit more time to do more things later on once you've achieved those expectations. But again, it's within a reason, right? So if all you have is those little like 0.5% world quests, okay, go play an alt, go play other games. It's fine. We don't want players to get burnt out, and that's the most important thing, right? Like you're running a raid team, you're running a guild. It's what is best for the guild. That is ultimately what it comes down to. What is best for the guild, and not just the players themselves, right? Like not everybody has the same time to play, right? We're not all that lucky to be able to commit 10 hours a day to the game anymore, right? But again, you want to maximize your character, whether it be Azerite power or rep or gear, through in-game activities, right? Expeditions, dungeons, crafted gear, whatever, right? So those are the kinds of things that we would expect of our players to do on off nights, and then that's really what part of being a raid team is about, right? That those are sort of the expectations that we have of our players in Death Jesters, at least.
Well, and one of the things that it can definitely be said is that Battle for Azeroth is definitely seems to have less time requirements than we did in Legion. One of the biggest challenge, of course, was the different specs and the artifacts. So they've improved that. So I don't think it's quite as time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
What are you guys doing for like your requirements for what to have at raid? Because beginning of the X pack is still expensive.
Yeah, and so not everybody is a multi-millionaire like midgets, and we can't all afford, the best things right away. Um, but again, you do have to be cognizant of your guild bank's funds, right? So going into heroic, we'll use probably 75 stat feasts, use our cauldrons. Going to mythic, probably the 100 stat feasts because Midnight Summit is so prohibitively expensive. I mean, it depends. For normals, we'll likely use our own food, which is super cheap to make. We'll see how that's going to fix on heroic as well. When we're close to a kill, obviously we'll use augment runes, and as the augment runes prices drop down, we'll use them more on the heavy heroic stuff and then more mythic stuff. But again, you're cognizant of everybody's funds, right? Not everybody can just throw money and buy tokens to fund their rating habits. And as a guild bank, we try to manage some of those funds as well to help players out, whether it be augment runes or again, we provide all the feasts and cauldrons, all that kind of stuff. So players shouldn't have to worry about gold, and we don't want them to worry about that kind of gold.
I want everybody to have fun too. It's, we talk about preparation and expectations, but you want to have fun. And there's a time and place for it. And sometimes it's those other community activities that where you get to have the most fun. Because a lot of time, especially, because you are trying to get to this next boss and do well, you want to be focused during raid time.
Absolutely.
So going into that, we've talked about, the expectations. How do you have review performance of applicants, especially ones that came in after progression at the end of an X pack and to the first boss encounters in Uldir? How do you handle that?
It's one of my favorite ones, actually. We get new applicants, decently often, and we asked them like, hey, how was your first raid night? How you feeling? How you liking the atmosphere? Enough jokes for you? Whatever was, Sparty too mean? And sometimes it's mixed reactions. Other times, they're loving it. Whatever, things are going well. And sometimes like, my DPS sucked. Am I going to get kicked after this? No, no, no. Listen, when you guys go into a new raid environment, it takes time to get acclimated to the strats and the people and the callouts and everything else. And people are often nervous, right? Like I totally get it. You go into a new workplace, a new team, you're nervous, right? So the first thing we try to stress with our apps is focus on mechanics, right? Two fundamentals of rating it, which I stress so much to you guys on stream here. Number one, be in the right position. Number two, kill the ads. If you do those two things correctly, you will win any boss fight, right? Like that's what every single boss fight comes down to. Stand in the right spot first. Nobody cares about your DPS, right? Like nobody cares. Did you wipe the raid to doing something stupid because you were standing in the wrong spot? Okay, well, don't do those kinds of things. Like your DPS comes with time. So we often go through a little debriefs with our apps of how they're doing afterwards. Hey, you missed a bunch of cooldowns here, whatever. And as a night progresses, we're putting little notes for ourselves. Where somebody made a mistake or whatever, to go back to those things later on, to follow up with our applicants. But a lot of it is we're trying to review these things and and go through the wipes and encounters expectations with our players. And again, we'll do another coach's corner with I think Zarania and you to really line up those expectations for our guild. But really, as leaders, we should be leading by example, right? So if you're a raid leader or if you're a guild leader or whatever, you should be leading by example, by performance, right? You should be that person that is wiping the raid once every blue moon. It shouldn't be a consistent issue. I mean, really with anybody. Um, and you're really there to help motivate that team, right? As leaders, it's um, you're there to to make sure people are having a good time and that we're seeing the constant progression and that kind of stuff, and people have the tools to succeed, right? Whether it be strats or explanations or answering their questions, and really go from there, right? When somebody is wiping the raid because they didn't know, well, whose fault is that? Right? Is it theirs for not asking? Is it ours for not explaining well enough? Did we do everything we possibly could to prepare this raider going into this raid? Well, that's an answer that we know that we have. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of expectation that we have going into our raids. And that's how we follow up with our apps, or we want them to improve. And the realization is that you're not going to be top shit coming out your first week into the guild. You're not going to be that top dog person. You'll be probably middle of the pack somewhere. If you do exceptionally well, that's awesome. And we're going to cover that as well.
Well, I think that sounds exciting. Is there anything else that you do in this prep?
In terms of strats, so like right now we have the teams split up into different strat groups where we're going through different encounters. We're building the strats. So I've always been I've always been of the mindset that we are looking to train our next leaders. It's not just Sparty or one raid leader saying, "Hey, this is the stuff. This is what we're gonna do. Go," right? Like, this is what I'm gonna tell you to do. I want these players to improve and become better. Better players, right? Whether you're an app or a member that's been in this guild, the one thing that there's no doubt in, you've improved some way, right? You have absolutely improved, whether it be performance or whatever. And we want players to learn how to assign cooldowns and do cooldowns and assign strats and go through these logs and that kind of stuff. So that team involvement is super, super important, right? Like, it's important to teach all these players these different skills, because that is going to make the guild overall stronger. Because when Sparty wins a lottery and he's not here in a couple months, then is the team in a place where they can succeed without Sparty or without another key member, without Towley, whatever? I mean, who else will hearth out of the raid mid-raid? So, you need to make sure that your raid and your guild team is in a good place. So yeah, strat prep, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes of like, well, what else can we do? Can we do to make sure the teams are ready to go for the first week of raiding?
Well, I think you guys are well on your way to being ready to go.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited. The leaders have really stepped up this tier. Getting things ready and talking to people, and I think our app's in a really good spot. So I mean, there's a couple more roster holes to fill, and for some reason we're short melee. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's great. So
Awesome.
so I do want to touch on. So that's really the prep going into you know Death Jesters and our expectations. But I know that did you want to talk about the second raid team, the weekend team?
Yeah, let's just spend a little time talking about it,
Yeah,
because it's a little bit different environment.
yeah. So
So go
let
ahead.
me do the introduction for. So Midgettes is starting a weekend raid team, which is exciting because they're going to be a mythic raid team, right? They're going to be a cutting edge raid team, and it's going to go through a lot of the growths and things that that any raid team has gone through. A lot of our Zeros to Heroes players, Zeros to Heroes teams, initially were said, hey, we're only going to do heroic, and now they're cutting edge. So we've started. We have more teams to create, but we've started a weekend raid team like we did a Wednesday, Thursday raid team. And Midges is heading this one up, but talk about, what kind of things you've gone through in terms of preparing your raid team and really building that cohesive bond between your own teammates so far.
Well, it's a little bit different because we don't have an application process.
Mm-hmm.
So people are just coming in right now and being told about the team and signing up. So we have a wide variety of experience levels. And honestly, I think we've had so much interest because we're growing so fast that we're going to end up having a couple of teams. We're going to have a normal and heroic team,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're going to have one that works on more mythic progression. But the biggest challenge is they're all new people. They're people who have just joined the guild. They don't really know us. So I can't come in and say, okay, here's all your expectations right now. I put down out a general guideline, and then the biggest challenge has been getting them to learn to communicate with each other.
Mm.
So one of the things that we've been doing is during our normal raid time, because we started creating this group like the last raid of Legion. So there was no way we are going to go in and go through the bosses. So we've been doing world quests, or not world quest, mythics and island expeditions together. And we did a really good job. We had a lot of good people show up. And what's exciting from that is I've been able to see some real strong leaders who can assist me, as well as they've started joking together and talking, and they're planning for the guild bank, and they're moving along. And so it's been very exciting. But I can't come in and say, hey, if you do this, you're going to be sat just yet. So we have to evolve to that.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And whenever you guys join a team, whether it's a sports team or it's a new work team, well, there's also often these team bonding exercises that they do, right? Like, let's learn to communicate to each other, let's learn each other's strengths and weaknesses and that kind of stuff, and just get to know each other better. Because when you know your team well, their names and what they like and whatever, that makes for a stronger team, right? And it's not necessarily just a raid team, but it could be any team. So those kinds of little icebreakers, those kinds of ways to communicate. You did a group night of expeditions and islands and that kind of stuff, and those are kind of things that really help a long way. And you guys have your own Discord channel now that you're getting to know each other, and you're sharing pictures and you're sharing jokes and all that stuff, and that stuff is really, really important when you're creating a new team, because you need to build that foundation before you start bringing down the hammer of, like, these are the expectations, go go go. It's not a business. That's not fun when you just go expectation, then that's it, right? You need to ensure that your players are having fun for sure.
Well, and honestly, if I'd come in and said, if you're not here on time, you're not going to get it. But what happens is, like last night, one guy went AFK, and the mythic that he really wanted to do, he wasn't there for. We didn't wait for him. He didn't say anything. So when he came back, I said, well, you have to be at the computer. So we'll continue to develop those expectations, but I'm already really confident with the team that I've got. I've got some really great people, some really strong leadership. I've got some people you can't have.
What? What do you mean?
What? You can't have my people. I like them. I really like my tank.
Well, I'll trade you Towley and a second round draft pick.
And a second round, are we going to negotiate them now? But no, it's exciting. But it's all new people. And so my first goal is to get them to know each other. We're all going to raid together for normals. We may have two groups for normals. Then heading into, once we get through that, we're going to start making our roster what we want it to be. I see some of my players that are just now getting to 120, or maybe not able to have the kind of time, maybe going into the more of a normal heroic group to start. And then the people that are more skilled and ready to go, because we got some very lucky people. We've got some retired DJs, or not retired DJs. We've got some DJs that love to raid and already have their alts raid ready. So we're going to jump in and then start working towards that. I've got a raid leader, but I'm always looking for help. So it's exciting, but it's completely different. I could not come in to this team and put down those kind of expectations at this point. I would scare them all off.
Okay, so I've got a really good one for you. So we often talk about, getting the people, make sure they're in the right seats on the bus, right? The leadership positions, they're performing to their strengths. When you're trying to find, and I know this is different for DJs, but how are you trying to find a raid leader or someone that's going to, to really push that team?
So what I did is I made sure that when we were doing these mythics, I ran with several different groups of people, because I wanted to get to know them. I wanted to see how they did in the raid. And I happened to have this one raid did this dungeon, did King's Rest. He had the right pace. He knew the bosses. He was explaining them. He was telling people how to do them. He then also did fun things that Midgettes likes, and showed me Peppy and helped me get my mummy pet. And I went, okay, this is perfect. This is who I want. So I reached out to him. And then I've got a couple of others, one that came to me and said, how do I make sure I get on this team? I want to be very serious, but I'm a priest, and there's already 6 healing priests signed up. And we had this great conversation. I really like her. So she's going to work on a warlock and have them both ready. And so I'm like, okay, you're on the team. So it's by getting to know these people and seeing what they do with them. And they didn't know that I was watching them per se. I just said, I'm going to be looking at what everybody's doing. I made sure that I was in different groups. And from that, I've kept track of who was there, who wasn't there, of the people who have signed up. And I've already, in my mind, got a fairly solid 15 people that I already see on the Mythic team roster.
That's fantastic. And, a lot of this reminds me of how Death Jester started 14-ish years ago. And when we recruited for our team, it was, hey, you don't have a crappy name. You seem like a decent person. And we chatted for a couple of minutes, like, hey, you want to join my guild? And then we start raiding UBRS together, right? And we went from there. And eventually we were slaying on Ixia together. And some of those guys. And eventually I went to Rulio and said, hey, do you want a raid lead? Because you're explaining things really well. So that he started raiding in Zul'Gurub, so 13 years ago, and he's still playing the game with us now, right? He's still doing stuff, and he led with us up until BC for a
Well,
while.
and he didn't have an awful name, and I can attest that he's an awesome person.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I mean that's fantastic, and I know this team will succeed. And with how many people are still looking for a raid team, again, we don't want to shy people away from Zeros to Heroes. We want to make sure that we try to find spots for people. Like I think there's like 50 people that are realistically looking for a raid team, and most of the raid teams are quite full of players of 25 to 30 players. So we're looking to really fill those holes, whether it be an early night team on the weekdays, another normal / heroic team on Friday, Saturday. So we do have the spots. We just need to find the right people to really lead some of these teams. And that
Well,
have,
and if people are interested, the best thing to do is to talk to you and get to know the community.
for sure.
Right now, with the weekend team, everything's open until Uldir. So come join in with us, because that's how we're going to see you and get to know you. There's I think we're up to 2,800 characters between the two guilds and the two alt guilds. So we continue to grow, and
That's
we
crazy.
can't know everybody. But that's how it happens. But how is it different in a community like DJs to ZTH and starting a new team and guild from scratch? Is it much different?
Fundamentally, it's the same. I mean, you're building that foundation. You're building those bonds first, and I'm a firm believer of building those bonds between players and giving something them to attach to makes them much more loyal players, and make sure that they have ownership of their guild because it's something they want to be a part of, and they just go from there. Like these players flourish. You water them enough, and they'll go from there. So it's the same way. I mean, you're building it from the fundamentals, and you're putting the right leadership people in place, and you're going from there. Like it's every team goes through the same growths, and on the leadership team in Zeros to Heroes, we try to share a lot of those mistakes that we're all making, so we're not repeating them over and over and over. Right? It's there for perpetual improvement, and we want to continue to improve our teams and our guilds.
Absolutely. Well, and Turner just said that we have over approaching 300 people on raid rosters in the guild right now,
That's incredible.
and that's not counting Death Jesters. So we're
That's
doing
amazing.
great.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think we've got a bunch of planning to do. I've got my other priest to level.
Oh
Do we have
yeah.
anything else to cover?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. We'll be doing another podcast some point next week. I am on vacation Thursday to Sunday, so we'll see when we're going to do it. But yeah, we'll have another podcast for you guys, prepping Coach's Corner stuff coming up as well, for expectations and boss fights, which you guys missed. We have a nice Coach's Corner intro, so stay tuned for that. But thank you guys for tuning into our podcast this week on raid team preparation and expectations. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good night. Be excellent to each other, and as always, live your life heroically. Have a fantastic evening.